Thank you. Secretary Dalton, according to your testimony, January 31st appears to be the first time that President Biden was briefed by the Pentagon about the surveillance balloon, which had been violating U.S. and Canadian airspace since January 28th. Are you aware of any existing Department of Defense policy to treat violations of U.S. sovereign airspace over Alaska differently from violations over the lower 48 states?
Senator Collins, no, I am not aware of such a policy. Alaska is part of the United States.
Then what explains that delay, days of delay?
Senator, on January 28th, when the balloon entered U.S. airspace over Alaska, the Pentagon was tracking it very closely through NORAD. NORAD had custody of it, and there were communications with the White House to apprise them of the balloon's
Was the
trajectory.
president informed?
I would have to defer to the White House in terms of internal White House
According
communications.
to the White House press secretary, he was not, and according to the testimony that we heard, there were 3 to 4 days before he was informed.
Senator, I would have to defer to the White House. Thank you.
General Sims, the commander of NORAD and NORTHCOM recently said that when NORAD first detected the balloon as it approached Alaska, he determined that it was in fact a surveillance balloon, but that it did not present a physical military threat to North America. And he explained that he didn't take immediate action because it was not demonstrating hostile attack or hostile intent. Why wouldn't a foreign military surveillance aircraft violating U.S. airspace inherently be considered to have hostile intent?
Ma'am, thank you for the question. I think, first of all, just to reiterate that General Van Herk did have all of the authorities necessary should he have determined it to have been a threat. The key piece here, I think, ma'am, is there was no hostile act or hostile intent. That would be the first. There was no impact to aviation routes, which would be another piece of that. The other would be there was no, at the time, there was no suspected impact to critical intelligence gathering ability in terms of infrastructure. That changed as the balloon as its path continued. That changed, and that's what prompted a different decision or a different conversation as it crossed into the United States.
Well, Alaska has a lot of, and I'm going to leave this to my colleague, but a lot of sensitive military installations.
Yes, ma'am.
And the advantage of a balloon over a satellite is it can hover over those sensitive sites.
Yes, ma'am. And throughout the path, and as somebody who lived for a couple of years in Alaska, throughout its path, ma'am, they were tracking exactly where it was in relation to that sensitive critical infrastructure and intelligence gathering capabilities. It was not near those locations, and as we reconstruct the path, we are not concerned with intelligence gathering in Alaska. And based on that, the assessment continued from NORAD NORTHCOM to continue to observe and report.
Well, it seems to me when you have a craft that's violating international airspace and you have sensitive military installations, whether they're in Hawaii or Alaska or the lower 48, we should treat it the same. Could you help educate the committee and the public on why China is using balloons and what benefits do they offer over satellites or other intelligence gathering platforms?
Ma'am, I don't have a light on here. I don't know if...
You still have 40 seconds.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, thank you. Ma'am, I think what we've learned is that there are some advantages. It can loiter, but what we think they gained was really very minor in comparison to what we think we can gain with low Earth LEO, with low Earth orbiting. And that went into the conversation as everybody was working through the risk. And as I mentioned earlier, We deemed that risk as it moved from Alaska towards the lower 48. We deemed that risk to change a little. And we also knew that we had the ability to mitigate that risk. And we'll be able to talk to that further in the session following.
But just to end, former Air Force General Charlie Moore, who is Deputy Commander of Cyber Command, just has pointed out that if you have a balloon that's moving extremely slowly, you have a persistence that you can't get from a satellite.
Senator, if I may, just to add, because we knew where the balloon was tracking, we took measures to protect those sites per established protocols. That included sensitive communications and covering up certain facilities.
Thank you.